This is the Cyber Insurance News and Information Podcast. I'm Martin Hinton, Executive Editor. Every week we talk to the underwriters, brokers, and security leaders shaping the market. Let's get into it. Today we are looking at why MFA is no longer enough on its own, the rise of phishing-resistant and passwordless authentication, and what zero trust means when you strip away the sales language. Joining me are Isabel Castillo, Lead InfoSec Ops Engineer at Lastwall, and Julien Richard, Vice President of Information Security at Lastwall. Isabel, Julien, thanks for coming in today. How are you? How's your day been so far?
Good. Just Friday. I don't know if this is going to come out on a Friday, but it's Friday, so Fridays are always good. And we're a couple days away from Hacker Summer Camp in Vegas, which is always exciting.
That's right. There's been no shortage of news about Hacker Summer Camp. I've never heard it quite referred to as that. I'm gonna go with that for now. I will credit you in any usage going forward. Isabel, how about you? It is Friday, so if we seem jovial and you're watching this on a Monday, that explains it. How's your day, Isabel?
It's been great. It's Friday. We're wrapping up the week, preparing for next week, but definitely looking for the weekend.
All right. Well, Julien, let's dive right in with a provocative question. Is it fair to say that MFA is no longer enough, or does that risk giving businesses the wrong message?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely not fair to say that it's not enough. It's enough. I think that there's multiple ways to see MFA. There's multiple factors at play, and it all depends on which type of MFA you're using. And yeah, we're definitely giving businesses the wrong messages. We're talking about security in depth, and I think that that's going to be a topic that we're going to touch today.
Yeah, that's true. Isabel, from an operational perspective, what do security teams still get wrong after senior management says, we have MFA, so we're protected, right?
They see it as a task instead of a continuous control. MFA is not a task. There are going to be exceptions when you're trying to implement it. And because of that, if you overlook that fact, you will expose your company and your customers to risk.
Got it. So let's step back from the topic for a second and establish some language. Julien, when people say MFA, what different technologies were they grouping together under that one label? Is it important to differentiate the kinds of MFA?
Absolutely. So we're looking at two different kinds. There's one that's phishing resistant, and we'll get that. We'll get into that later today. But we're talking about, phishing resistant, non-phishing resistant. So anything from SMS messages that you're getting one code, authenticator apps same thing that do give you a code, push notification, click links that you got to click when it sends to your email. And then we're looking at things like YubiKeys, Passkeys, and FIDO2 WebAuthn technologies.
Got it. So maybe Isabel, could you give me sort of the spectrum from, which is the most secure or strongest, maybe the better way to put it, to least strong or less strong? Is there a category or a way to rank them?
Yeah, you can escalate it. If you think of your house, right? If I just close the door, that's my password. If I use MSS, you close the door and you put a lock. If you use an authenticator, you put a deadbolt. If you use your FIDO2 keys or your passkeys, you put a deadbolt, a chair, and another chair on top of it. That's how I would rank them.
The old the chair under the doorknob. I like that. Do you think in the broader context, beyond your own professional experience, do you think when companies are buying these products, they're understanding what threat each product is designed to stop, or is there an understanding gap in this space?
I will say there's an understanding gap because, well, there's so much technology there available, but before you even buy something, you need to understand what your needs are and what you're trying to protect and what you're applying each technology to. I will say there's an understanding gap, and companies will benefit by really sitting down and looking at what they're trying to protect and see what they're trying to buy will cover that need.
I mean, there are a lot of variations here, and I'm just going to read from this list of I guess, terms. There's authentication factor, one-time password, push-based MFA, number matching passkeys. It goes on, session tokens, conditional access. I wonder whether or not, are those all very different things, almost like a different beverage you might get at a deli? Or are there ways that they work together or are complementary to each other?
They would definitely work together. I will see it as beverage of different quality and different price tag. That's what I will see. They're all gonna be go ahead. They're all gonna help you protect your company, but one is gonna do it more and more securely than the other. One is your water, if it's just a password, if it's just an MSS, or the other one is gonna be, I'm not a drinker, but I'm going to assume it's gonna be your, I think it's Black Label whiskey. That will be your I think that's what that is. Forgive me my lack of knowledge, but that will be your 502 and your Passkeys. That is the expensive one that is going to give you more protection.
So the premium beverage, we'll call it, we don't want to exclude anyone's personal choices, would be a Passkey or FIDO, the top of the tier or the most secure. Great. Okay. Understood. Now, before we move on, is there anything about the sort of terminology or this part of it, Julien, that you think needs greater clarification or explanation?
I think one thing that people get wrong is when we talk about factors, a factor is something you have, something you are, something something you know, something you are, and something you have. And you can add 3 of something you have. It doesn't make it multi-factor. That's still one factor. It's just multi-step authentication. It's very different from multi-factor authentication. So you need to have at least one of each, at least 2 of these 3 factors to make it pure multi-factor.
So there's that. That's there's one of my favorite quotes is, and I'll butcher it, but it's a Mark Twain line, and his line goes like this: "The difference between the right word and the almost right word is no small matter. 'Tis the difference between the lightning and the lightning bug." And multi-factor versus multi-step sounds incredibly similar. In fact, they're only off by 1 letter or a third, but there's a dramatic difference in what that creates for the security of a network or any kind of system, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Understood. So I asked early at the beginning why MFA isn't enough anymore, and you pushed back on that. And I wonder whether we might sort of explore that a little more to help the audience understand where we are and the great sort of range of MFA's potential application or the way it can be applied. So was it oversold as a solution, or do you feel like it's just run its course as a tool for security? That may be a bit aggressive, but you tell me that. Push back on that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, listen, even if you go with SMS, which is probably the one that people know the most about and probably has the most vulnerabilities, still better than nothing at all. Like, if you have SMS in your environment, doesn't mean you should just throw it away and just go back to passwords because, people are saying that MFA is not the golden solution that it was once sold to be. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be striving to getting something more secure. One big theme in this whole conversation, I think, is going to be that, and I like to say, your threat model is not my threat model. If I'm protecting, government information, specs for highly specialized weaponized systems, I may want to have. Maybe SMS is not enough at that point, and I would argue that it isn't. But if you're protecting, the amount of times that somebody watched Gangnam Style on YouTube, well, maybe that can be okay with SMS because if it gets leaked, it's not that sensitive, and people are not going to die.
Got it. I think that this is a very important distinction to make. That the idea of not doing something is that nobody would advise that. If you have any kind of variation of MFA, you should employ it. And I always try to, in the podcast particularly, is sort of move that into human terms. And that means, maybe you can't run a marathon, but you can walk. And the idea that some level of physical activity is better than none for your health and for your well-being. And that holds true in this space too. So I just want to be very careful for the audience's sake that we don't put them in a situation where they think, oh, if I can't get a passkey for it, then it's just not worth it. Never mind. I won't do anything except use a silly password I've repeated with my, my pet's name in it. Is that how important a point is that, do you think, Isabel?
I'm laughing because of your pet's name. It is very important. You need to add a little bit of friction there. And no, like you will never leave. You will never just shut the front door of your house. You will at least lock it. It is important that you at least put at least one way of MFA to protect yourself.
Yeah. So Isabel, within what does poorly implemented MFA look like? If I'm watching this or listening to this podcast and I've got a company, what are a few of the sort of canaries in the coal mine or telltales that I might look for to make me realize, ooh, I've got to adjust this or fix that, or maybe we need to dial up the security level or the MFA quality here or there? What would someone see if they looked around an organization?
Inconsistent implementation on MFA. So some employees have it, but the admins don't have it. Some employees have it, but the contractors don't have it. The executives don't have it. That's a very poorly implemented MFA, because the control is there, it can help you, but you didn't, because of X, Y, and Z reason, perhaps people had too much friction, you didn't implement it fully and to be effective, regardless of which level of MFA you're going to use. It has to be consistently implemented for everybody, and leadership will set a great example if they 100% embrace MFA for them as well.
Julien, so I guess the obvious issue with inconsistent employment is that an attacker can look for someone who's doing it incorrectly, and that one account creates a doorway into the network, the system. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is not a technology problem. This is a process. It's a policy problem. If you're not implementing your MFA correctly, then you're probably not patching your systems correctly because you don't have the right processes in place. You're not a mature organization. So we're going to talk a lot about defense in depth. This is just one way to protect your environment. If you're not patching your front facing firewall and they can just completely bypass authentication, you can have the most secure authentication system available on that device. But if there's a flaw that you haven't patched that you can just walk around it, there's not a whole lot that authentication can do. So we really need to talk about defense in depth. We really need to talk about other controls that are in place, and badly implemented systems are not just tied to MFA. They're tied to any other systems in your environment. So it comes down to process policy. If you're being audited, you need to show that you're doing the right things at all the right places.
I mean, what you're describing, I think, is, and Isabel touched on this, is that to make something secure, you have layers of defense, not one defensive point, and the way they work together strengthens them. And I'm searching for an example of that in nature, but it's a bit like weaving a piece of thread, right? You know, a piece of thread is quite weak, but you could weave it into a blanket that can hold weight. Is that a too simplified an analogy? I don't know, Julie and Isabel, which one of you wants to see whether I made it?
I like to see it. It's very simple. Hackers are lazy. I was an ethical hacker for many, many years. I'm lazy. I'm going to take the path of least resistance. And in my case, ethical hacker, I'm being paid to see stuff in an environment. But for a malicious actor, if they're not targeting you, they're just looking for opportunities to ransomware people and things like that. If they keep hitting barriers after barriers after barriers, they'll move on to the next person. So it's, the analogy is, I don't need to run faster than the bear. I just need to run faster than the other person next to me is kind of the appropriate analogy in nature. Cliche, but
Isabel, I asked about what a company with poor MFA looks like. And in our pre-interview for this, I think Julien mentioned sometimes executives get preferential treatment when they call the help desk, and maybe they don't have to go through all the controls, which we know is a problem when it comes to social engineering. People pretend to be people. But then there are also the phenomenon where you get sort of emergency access accounts, the quote unquote break glass accounts. When you have as Julien was just talking about, you need to sort of adhere to your system and your guidelines. That's the protocols you create. And when you vary outside those, that creates vulnerability that is, the inconsistency you've touched on. Tell me about that sort of break glass, sort of these weaker controls that exist around maybe certain people who are grumpy, if you will, because it does break down to that kind of thing, to your point about it not being a technical problem. Julien's point about that part of me.
So break glass account, by definition, they don't have MFA. Why? Because if MFA fails, then I can access my account, and now the crisis is just going to be a catastrophe. You cannot access your system and recover it. Touching on exceptions. So the way I see security is that when security or the process of security fails, the company pays. And nobody hates more than seeing a company paying their executives, right? That's where leadership comes into play. That's where your procedures and your policies come into play. Nobody is exempt from a phishing scam. Nobody is going to be exempt from ransomware. No company is bulletproof in terms of that. And because of that is that you cannot create exceptions unless the exceptions fulfill a security need. For that is your break glass account.
Got it. Thank you very much for that clarity. I get it. So I want to pivot now sort of the insurance world, the underwriting experience. And you know, the phrase is MFA deployed, right? You're asking whether that's there, but it's being bypassed. So how are attackers bypassing MFA in the present, today, if you will?
There are many, I've got a dog behind me, so if there's weird noise, that's why. So there are many attack vectors for attacking MFA. One is your classic social engineering. Hey, what's your code on your thing? Because I see that your account was going to be locked out if we don't do it. We need to do something from the admin panel. Can you give me that information? And then they basically go ahead and log into your account. Now, every one of these accounts, except for one, kind of falls under the assumption that they have your password. A lot of us reuse passwords. There's been a lot of breaches. They can try to reuse passwords. Once they have your password, all they need is that second factor. That's something you have, or that's something you are. Hopefully, they're not knocking your door down and cutting your fingers because it's a biometric thing. But if you want to get dark, but then there's adversary in the middle, and we can talk about that a bit later. But there's a bunch of different types of ways to bypass it.
Well, Julien, take us into adversary in the middle. Tell me about that. What does that mean?
Basically, an attacker gets you to visit a website, whether they send you a text link, they send you a phishing link through an email address, and it looks like it's coming from your bank, right? And they've registered this domain name that's called, your bank is bank.com. They registered bonk.com, and you go on bonk.com and it looks exactly like the same webpage. They get you to put in your username password, and then they simply send that password over to your bank. They log in with that. Then it says, hey, you need an MFA code. So let's say it's an SMS code. You get it on your phone. You're the one that's starting to log in. So all they do is they go, oh, what's your MFA code? You put it into bonk.com. Again, they proxy that request. They send it over to your real bank. And once you're logged in, you have your authorization token, your session token. They steal the session token. They don't steal your password or your TOTP code or your code that's being sent, because it's usually one time. It's a one-time use. So they'll actually steal your session. And I don't want to get too technical, but basically with a website, you need to pass a thing that's called a session token every time you visit it, so that they know it's you. There's no state. A website is not stateful. So if you have that session token, you can log in as the person. You just put in your browser, is trivial, and then you get access to the account.
So Isabel, whether it's this or session and token theft, what type of monitoring might be the kind of thing that helps, an unusual device, location? How might that? What are the workarounds here? What are the solutions to some of this that people could employ?
Right, so this is where you have your alerts and your monitoring. So what happens is, in perspective, you're trying to look for a pattern, right? Like people that have children, they know when their children are doing something weird, because you know the pattern of your children, right? The same concept for a company. You know the pattern and the behavior of your employees. You know where they're supposed to be logging in from. We can implement geofencing. We can take into account something that's called impossible travel, which means if Martin today logged in from Texas, he's not going to log in an hour later from the Philippines. That's weird. That's hopefully one day that'll be possible, but right now it is not possible. That will get flagged right away. If Martin is trying to log in from a device that's not recognized, that's another flag. If Martin is failed his authentication 60 times in 30 seconds, that's really weird. That's not the Martin that we know. That will trigger an alert.
Flag, yeah.
I mean, we did talk about Black Label whiskey, so maybe Martin's just having a hard time typing his password.
Yeah, that would be flagged. Yeah.
It is Friday, like we discussed. I mean, there are other things, Julien. Like, the one that I understand it. I've had it explained to me. The SIM swapping one that would affect the SMS MFA. How does that work?
We're lucky that we haven't seen that attack vector in a long time. I think the telcos, the telephone companies have put in the right processes, the right things. They've learned their lessons. But basically, if you're using your phone as your something you have, right? So your phone number is something that you have. It's not something you know. You get something sent to your text message, and you need to fill in that code. We all still have accounts that do that. If I can call the telephone company and convince them that I'm Martin, and I lost my phone, they can they can basically give me a SIM, so a card that holds Martin's phone number. They do believe that I'm really him, and then I have his phone number. If I also have his password because I've phished him somehow, or Martin reused this password in one of the previous breaches, now I can log into the site. When it asks me for the SMS code, is going to be sending it to Martin's phone number, and that's a very important part when we talk about something you have, is that it doesn't mean that it's Martin or Isabel. It's just that somebody has Martin or Isabel's phone number. That's very different. So that's what attackers do. It got to the point where they were actually physically attacking workers at the Verizon store to steal the iPads, to change the SIM and things like that. But the telco companies have really cracked down and putting the right controls in place, and we're not seeing it often. It used to be very common in like high theft in cryptocurrency world, like huge amounts of cryptos. If you knew that somebody had a lot of crypto, it would be worth to go in and physically assault staff. And I laugh, but like it's to get you out of your basement and going to the Verizon store and hit somebody's knees with a baseball bat, probably need a lot of money in that account.
I mean, I listen. I mean, I think the headline, if you will, right here is that a problem that used to exist in this world has improved. And I think that, if you're in the space a lot, it would seem like the sky is always falling, but there is a lot going on to solve these problems, and solutions sometimes take time. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, to your point, this used to be worse and now it's better, which is the trajectory you want generally. Isabel, help desk and recovery attacks. Tell me about that and what processes you can have that are weak password resets and strong.
A weak password reset, sending you immediately your password in plain text in the email. You forgot your password, here's your new password. Here, enter it. And that password doesn't expire. That is, you don't go ahead and change your password. That's a weak account recovery. A strong account recovery is, I'm going to send you this one-time link. This one-time link is going to expire in about 5 minutes. And then on top of that, you have to enter a different code from your Authenticator app. That's a strong account recovery system.
Got it. This is an area where it falls into the Mission Impossible world, doesn't it, Julien? This is where the social engineering and deepfakes and personal information found on a public, maybe social media channel. It's a cousin for the CEO. Talk about how that part of this is, it's a procedure, a human issue. It's not really a technical issue.
No, and we're talking about identity, right? So if you think about the triad of access control or things like that, you've got authentication, which you authenticate against the system. You prove this is who I am. You prove that you have the right, you are the same person that registered on that site, basically is what it means. And then you have authorization. What am I allowed to do? The one thing that we always forget is identification. So there's a reason why your bank gets you to go to the bank with your passport to set your password or set your PIN on your card, because it is a high risk area. Again, not to say that Netflix is not important, but like for me to register on Netflix, I probably don't need to get anything not notarized. I don't need to go and get my passport stamped or set. So again, when we talk about resetting stuff, if I have access to a high side top secret environment and I lose my password, I shouldn't be able to call the help desk and ask them to reset it. Like Isabel's examples of magic links and everything else, those are beautiful. They work well for certain environments. But at the end of the day, if it's again, high side, top secret place that I'm trying to log into, somebody could have broken into my email address where that magic link is being sent. I could be the one that's calling and asking for those things. So I'll repeat it again. Your threat model is not my threat model. It depends on the system. And identity is a very different problem than authentication.
It is. So keeping us in the authentication world, all this is necessitated a rise in phishing-resistant authentication. So, Julien, we touched on some of the examples of this early on, but tell me about what that is and the names of the devices or the tools that you can use to utilize it.
Sure. This is where I can get very deep in the weeds and technical. So stop me if I go off. It's you need to understand the technology underneath it a little bit to be able to understand why we call it phishing resistant. First off, doesn't mean that you're not going to get any phishes in your emails. You're still going to get all the phishes. I mean, over 60% of traffic on the internet right now is bots just trying to phish people. So, a phishing resistant solution just means that you can't, that phish can't succeed. So we talk about FIDO2, WebAuthn. These are the types of technologies that you use. You talk about YubiKeys and Passkeys. But at the end of the day, when you register on a site and they prove that it's actually you and you get that credential, the credential is a key pair. So you have a private key pair and a public key pair. They're tied through the magic of math that is way over my head. They work together and you store the private key and it never leaves your device ever again. It shouldn't. We'll talk about being able to transfer it from one side to the other and why that's a problem. But at the end of the day, you're creating one for every system that you're logging into. So back to my example of bank and bonk. If bonk is trying to do the adversary in the middle attack, I see the request coming from bonk. It's not that I'm trying to log into it. It's that I can't because I do not have a credential for bank.com. I just don't. And I'm not going to release it to anybody else but bank.com. And there's a way for me to make sure that it's actually bank.com. Again, kind of technical and we can get into that. But the reality is that every credential is tied to a specific system and you cannot use it anywhere else and it's not going to work. And you cannot take it from me and pass it over and proxy it over to the other side. It just doesn't work.
So let me see if I make sure I understand this for my sake and the audience's. If you have a passkey, for example, when you say system, do you mean like my phone is the only phone that is recognized? Is that you create like a unique identifier for each device that you might want to use to go into your bank account?
No, you create a private certificate or a passkey that is only tied to that website, right? When I say system, I don't want to bind myself just to websites. You can do this for applications and all kinds of stuff. But to simplify it, my bank, right? So I have a passkey or certificate that only works at my bank. It's not going to work on any other system.
Got it. That I think that the word system is what threw me there. Thank you very much. Isabel, where does this, obviously this information needs to be secured. And I wonder about the storage of these private credentials and that element of all this. What are the best practices around that?
I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. No. So let me ask you a very simple question then. If you're using passkeys and you lose a phone or a laptop or, what are the protocols there? What is it? Something as simple as, cancel that credit card as soon as you realize it's lost, or, you've got all this feature now where you can freeze your debit and an ATM card or your credit cards temporarily if you misplace them. What about that part of this? The more sort of human part.
No, you need to revoke everything. The moment your private key is compromised, you need to revoke everything. Just say everything becomes, we like to say that we'll throw the computer away, but truly you kind of almost have to throw it away because now you have to generate a new set of passkeys. So passkeys, private, public key, right? The public key is what everybody uses to authenticate into that website that holds their private key. But if those are compromised, forget about it. You're revoking absolutely everything and you need to recreate those keys to secure the system again.
The obvious reality there is that's a very you mind your P's and Q's, you look after your things and you keep them in a safe place, and like very old school kind of mindset about these things are valuable, take care of them with that mindset.
There are protocols you can use, like you create one. We're talking about device bound passkeys. There are passkeys that are not device bound that is stored in software where you can actually transfer them. But the device bound ones are stored basically in a safe and a chip on your computer, your mobile phone, your laptop. It doesn't mean that it's the only thing that you can log into that site with. You can create a second pair of public and private keys that you can store on another device. So that way you can still log into the device to your application. Let's say your bank. You just need to revoke the ones that were lost on your laptop. So the pair that was the public key that the bank has, that is the equivalent private keys on your laptop. You just wipe that one away because somebody had access to it. And if you've done your things right, if you've backed things up correctly, you can still log in with your phone and create a new one on your laptop because you can log in with your phone. The problem is that when you only have one key pair and that is gone, then you have to go to the bank, show your passport and say, yes, I'm really Julien.
Exactly. This is one of the lines that I've been hearing a little, and I was just writing something today about friction, not all friction being bad. And I've heard a few people talk more about the idea that maybe a little more friction would help us in this situation, particularly when it comes to, the fact that we've been trained for 20 years now to one click to buy. And, you don't even have to think about whether you want something anymore. And the next thing you know, it's at your door. I guess, the idea that phishing resistant and is something that MFA gets asked about on the cyber insurance application. So do you have MFA? It might be the question. What are your thoughts, either of you, about the idea that question needs to be a little more precise? Should it be, do you use phishing resistant authentication, to make sure that it's drilling down on what we really care about, right? How secure are you trying to make it, and what tools are you using?
I'm going to give an opinion here, and Isabel's going to maybe laugh at me because our security questionnaires that we send to vendors may have some of these questions, but there's nothing worse than a yes or no question, because of course they're going to say yes. Yeah, we have MFA. It's implemented in the key system to get into the building, but it's not in the system that holds everybody's financial information. But we do have MFA because it's implemented in somewhere, right? So it's easy to say yes and not lie. Now, auditors are not doing themselves any favor when they ask that question, because the question that you should ask is, talk to me about your access control system. What do you do? What inventory do you have? How do you protect things in your inventory? Show me all your systems and tell me each system how you protect it. Is it through, just a common identity solution? Do they have their own identity components or access control components in that system? But at the end of the day, 0 or 1 questions, binary questions, they're not great for auditors. And customers, we're not doing them any favor, because all of a sudden they get popped, and when I say pop, they get breached. And the cybersecurities come back. So it's like, well, you said you had MFA. We did, on that system, not the one that was breached. So they didn't lie, but the insurance is still not going to pay out.
Yeah. Isabel, you were mentioned there. Do you have any reply to that?
No, he's right. You really need to find out the scope of what your MFA is covering, because like Julien said, it's really easy to say we have MFA, but truly you're asking, what you really want to ask is, where is your MFA implementing? Which critical assets is your MFA being implemented? It's not just whether it's there or not, it's where, how, what, and why.
Yeah, it's a bit like asking the question: does the door to your house lock, versus do you lock the door to your house? Right. Back to my Mark Twain line. Right. How you ask the question can open yourself up to a lot of things.
You lock the door, leave the windows open.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I lock the door, but I leave the windows open. Exactly. Isabel, one of the things that we talked about in the pre-interview was passwordless authentication. What does that mean? Passwordless?
That just basically means that you're not using a text password to authenticate every time. You're using something else. Maybe you're using a YubiKey. Maybe you're using your Authenticator app. But that's basically just what it means. You're no longer typing your pet's name to gain access.
Got it. Julien, is that phishing resistant then? To come back to that idea?
Yes or no? Yes and no. Some passwordless solutions are phishing resistant, some aren't. It depends on what the technology is. Passwordless just means no password. Most phishing resistant solutions do not implement password. One of the factors may be password, but the part that is phishing resistant does not require passwords usually.
One of the parts of this that people are familiar with is unlocking something with their face or their fingerprint. So pardon me, I have to use the language, biometrics, right? is that well, what do you think about that?
Well, hopefully, like Julien say, you're not gonna get your fingers chopped off or your corneas stripped off, right? Let's just hope that doesn't happen. It's not like the movies. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Uh, so this is where AI comes into place, right? This is where you read a lot of reports that biometrics have been bypassed because somebody used AI to replicate your face, to replicate something, or to distort something, and now that has been bypassed. So now I think we have to ask, how is biometrics in the face of AI? I think that's where the next podcast is going to be like, because that's a very, very long conversation.
Yeah. One of the things we know that, one of the burdens on the help desk is password resets get problematic. And money being spent in the cybersecurity world is still viewed as a cost center, and the idea of it being, something that really is integral in protecting the profit center is, maybe an evolving mindset. Is this one of those things that can reduce that workload and free up, I guess, budget for other things?
I mean, the obvious joke here is that nobody loses their face, but literally, figuratively, people lose face. But
Nick Quaid, for example,
people are still going to lose credentials no matter what it is. They're going to lose their device. They're going to lose these things. They're going to need to log into a new device that doesn't have that passkey. It's like we're not going away from the help desk having to deal with some of these things, but I mean, yes and no, because at the end of the day, losing a password is a lot easier than losing a hardware device or not remembering your password.
Well, in this context, and within this, one of the things we know about and we hear about is, if you will, identity sprawl, and the idea that, as you touched on earlier, that when someone leaves a company, their permissions exist and logons linger, and it's it's a bit like having lots of keys floating around to your Airbnb that you don't collect, or maybe that's too simplified. But companies do hire a lot of temporary workers, whether it's contractors or whatever it might be. How would you suggest someone manage those situations where you've got people who maybe are somewhere in an office for 6 weeks, or they need access to a network for a set period of time? What do we do there to help secure things?
So I like to say sometimes that things are simple, but they're not easy. This is a very simple solution. You audit your accounts. You set reminders that says you only activate the account for the amount of time that the person is there. If they stay longer, their account's not going to work. You're going to have to call the help desk and implement it. But it's a lot easier doing that than having all the sprawl that you have. This is not a technology problem. This is a process problem. This is a business process problem.
Yeah. I mean, on that note, Isabel, one of the things we know is that, I've had jobs where I had the, if you will, church and state phones. One was personal and one was work. A lot of people don't want to have to carry two phones. What about employees who use personal devices? We know that's a soft spot in cybersecurity generally, but COVID revealed that with all the work from home, which isn't going away. What about that space?
Well, the moment that employees are allowed to use your personal, let's say your phone device, the company has to accept that you're assuming a risk, right? You can't separate what the employee is allowed to use. You can have a work profile that is completely separate from what your personal stuff are, but this is a company decision. This is based on the risk statement of the company, and the company decides what you're allowed to access from your phone, which tools you're allowed to access, and to what level of access you're going to have.
So, in the context of insurance, put it simply, if you can say yes to passwordless authentication, is that something that should help you on your cyber insurance bill?
It's a hard one for me to answer, because at the end of the day, like I said, you can have the best technology when it comes to authentication if you're not patching the device that you're logging into, and you can just completely bypass authentication. And these things exist. Like, this is not a theoretical exercise or thought experiments. There are a ton of internet facing devices that people log into that have very strict authentication controls that have bugs in them where an attacker, and I was going to say a talented attacker, but at this point, some of these things, like if you can find the code on the internet, you run it, you gain access to the system. So giving a premium rebate on your cybersecurity insurance for one technology does not make a ton of sense for me. It needs to be that you're getting audited with all of these different controls that are in place. Some are more important than others. You know, that's one of the things that I'm juggling in my head sometimes, is that we spend so much time on making sure that the policy is well written, and that carries as much weight as having all your devices patched. Like, there should be levels of like certain things that should make you understand that the environment is much better. A well-written policy does not protect you from an unpatched VPN that's sitting open on the internet.
I mean, what you're saying is that good cybersecurity, or better cybersecurity is like a complex diet, right? You know, you got I don't even know if it's a food pyramid anymore. I can't keep track of all that stuff. But the idea that you can't just do one thing and think, oh, that's it. You got to have a holistic approach, I guess.
You can't outrun a bad diet.
Yeah, you can't outrun a bad diet. There you go. Yeah, was a 6-parter made in the kitchen. I'm told.
There's a well-known cybersecurity professional, and I'll give him credit, Joe Slowick, who once said at a conference where I was at, he goes, "You got to eat your cybersecurity fruits and vegetables," and that is in my phone, in my notes, and I'm using it everywhere that I can. You got to practice proper cyber hygiene. So eat your cybersecurity fruits and vegetables before starting doing all the sexy, the latest, greatest tools and everything else. Just make sure that your foundational levels are great.
So I want to shift into a phrase that gets thrown around, and it's one of the many ones in the is it lexicon, the dictionary of cyber insurance and cybersecurity, because you could definitely publish a dictionary. The phrase zero trust. So what does zero trust actually mean, Julien? Why don't we start with you? Explain it to me.
First of all, I can hear my friend Ian screaming, "Well, there it is," every time that somebody asks me that question. Zero trust is just, it's exactly what it means. It doesn't mean you're not trusting your employees. It means that you're not trusting the mechanism that you're logging into. It means if I log into my laptop, I'm obviously logged into my laptop. So all of a sudden, I'm a known entity, or somebody who has the right information to log into the laptops as Julien has logged into that laptop. When I open up my Gmail account, I'm not logged in unless, the session's still there. But let's just say that it's a brand new laptop. Just because I'm logged into my laptop, we can't trust that it's actually me and I should get access to my Gmail. Now I open my Gmail, log into it. I get a link to a document that I need to sign, and I need to log into Office 365. Well, at this point, I'm logged into my laptop. I'm logged into my Gmail account. I mean, it's obviously Julien, so we should trust it. Zero trust means when you log into Office 365, they're still asking you for your username and password. Now, when you think about internal systems and internal applications at a company and things like that, a lot of times you log in once in the morning and you have access to everything. I'm not saying that you should be logging into every single application that you use day to day. I'm saying the one where you can actually reset the admin account for the financial system, there should be zero trust there. There should be, hey, I'm going to ask you for your full login information.
Isabel, in this context, we hear the phrase least privileged. What does that mean in this context with regard to sort of business operations and zero trust?
That means that I'm going to give you the permissions that you need, and only the permissions that you need to do your job. So for zero trust, have you ever seen the movie Wreck-It Ralph?
I have.
Okay, when Wreck-It Ralph is leaving the Pac-Man meeting, he has a little cherry, he gets stopped. Who you are? Where are you going? He passes, he crosses again, and they're like, who you are? Where are you going? Before he's allowed to enter. That's zero trust. You're going to be asked who you are every time you're trying to log into something. And
so
then...
in the human context... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in the human context, this is like, you don't hold the door open for the person behind you. They've got to swipe their own badge, right? Through every door, right? This idea that, but again, when you come back to social engineering, that is quite literally, we want to help, right? That's one of the things that you hear. We're helpful by default in some places anyway.
And that's why you take the human out of the loop. You just present the login page.
Well, so that's what I was sort of getting to. The idea is you don't create a situation where someone can share their password with you because it doesn't work like that. Back to the whole idea of protocols and guidelines and the system, the way it's designed removes the ability for those sorts of things to happen. Like for example, the door will only allow one person through, or an alarm bell goes off in the physical world sense. If two people go through with only one pass being swiped, alarm bells go off, and the guard who's watching 10 gates sees that and says, okay, everyone stop. We got to figure out what's going on here. That's the system side of this in a physical world sense. Is that is that a sort of safe way to think about it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to move down to the cyber insurance and underwriting sort of reality of all this. And we'll spend some time talking about that. Julien, what should insurers stop treating? Should insurers stop treating MFA as like a binary control? That idea that it's well, there's the question. I won't belabor it. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I touched upon that a bit earlier. Like, it's not a 0 or 1. It's not a yes or no, because MFA is, what type of MFA do you have? Where is it implemented? Is it protecting, we like to say crown jewels, like the one thing that would hurt you if an attacker or a competitor gets access to. Those things are the ones that should be protected the most, and they should be protected with the highest level MFA that you can implement in that system. So it's not a 0 or 1 control. It's hey, what's your inventory like? What are all the systems that you have? What data are you protecting, and how are you protecting that data? And authentication is one part of it.
So in that world, Isabel, what evidence could a company organization provide to demonstrate that the control is operating? One of the things we hear about is this idea of moving away from the checklist to constant monitoring. What about that space?
That's where your logs and your configurations come into play. That's where you can show where MFA is configured, how is it configured. You can show your conditional access policies. You can show your login records. You can show reasons why logins failed, right? You 100% can see if MFA was successful or not. Those are some examples that a company can provide to show, yes, we are in fact correctly and consistently applying MFA across our environment.
So in a situation where you might want to show that it's a bit like due diligence in reverse, right? You can show all the work that's done and all the times it worked properly, and that's proof of the system being implemented properly and executing its tasks properly. Do I have that right? Yeah. So could you verify that, Julien? Is this something you could verify automatically? Is there an automated way to do this? Or again, the questionnaire and the trust and yes and no questions, you touched on all the flaws that exist there, because you can be honest and still be wrong, right? That's one of the things about the questionnaires that always comes to my mind. What about the verification of all this?
Yeah. So one of the main things that we talk about a lot when it comes to audit is a point in time. And we're trying to move away from that because you're doing all the right things. The classic meme is like a dirt road into a paved section, back into a dirt road. And the paved section is during the audit. Everything's perfect. And then, things get turned off, things get changed, everything else. So when we talk about continuous, ATO, like in the FedRAMP space, authorization to operate, or you can implement this anywhere you want to. Basically it's showing every X amount of time, let's say weekly, monthly, uploading your logs. Logs are machine readable. They always look the same way. You have the ID, you have the timestamp, you have it's very machine readable. And there should be a log entry that says that MFA was not enabled or was disabled at one point for an account or something like that. That's something that's going to show up in the logs. So you upload those. I mean, if you're missing a full weekend of logs and nothing happened, the auditor should be asking questions because somebody obviously turned off the login for a reason. Maybe they turned it off for the weekend. So you got to cache those things. But yeah, absolutely. Logs get uploaded automatically. It can be an automated system. Logs typically do not contain sensitive information. There may be information that you can infer what's happening in the environment and things like that, but it doesn't log, usernames. It doesn't log it shouldn't log IP addresses where people are logging in. You can sanitize them, upload it to a system reads it, gives a thumbs up, and then you're good. The auditors or the company, the cyber insurance company would have a dashboard of all their customers. They go like, oh, there's a couple of reds there. Let's go see what it is. And they notice they turned off MFA for an hour. They call the company up. They go, why did you do that? They give a very valid reason. Exceptions have been documented and everything else. And they turn that dashboard item back to green and everybody's protected. it's how I would operate a SOC inside of an environment. And there's no reason why a cybersecurity, a cyber insurance company can't do that. And if you hit all the controls, then you can give the rebates you want.
So on that, and you sort of touched on this, Isabel, the authentication logs, an incident response situation or a subsequent insurance claim, what logs become the most useful? And tell me a little about that.
Your login logs become really useful. So what you're looking for in an incident response, let's say in this case, somehow MFA fell and a risky login was detected, you're tracing that, the activity of that user. So you want to know when did they use to log in, where did they log in from, what device they used to log in, and after they log in, where did they go? What did they do in that environment? You really are just tracking all the API calls that the person did. You're trying to track what systems they access, and you're just building a timeline. And the proof of that is the logs. Now, keeping in mind that sometimes logs can be modified. So you're looking for the log, you're looking for the integrity of the log to make sure that let's say a skill attacker or a skill ChatGPT prompt did not go ahead and delete your traces.
Got it. I mean, I guess this is a question for both of you. Account takeover, business email compromise, ransomware exposure. This sort of, stronger authentication broadly helps reduce the exposure to those and the losses. I wonder if you could sort of talk about because one of the things we know is it's easy to see things when they exist. Showing the value of something that doesn't happen and avoiding something is sometimes a bit hard for people, particularly when they're the ones doing a budget in a corporation, for example. So the sorts of exposures that this reduces and the potential losses this reduces, talk to me about that space here. I don't know to what degree you can put it into financial terms. We know that there's reputational damage from this sort of thing. And to be frank, looking back and to use the log sort of framing of its reference, if you look back at a company and you realize that they were kind of inconsistent, that's a bad look, to put it very, very basically. What about that reduction that in these concerns and the cost of these things, if they do happen, and the ability to claim on an insurance policy, what value does stronger authentication bring in that space?
I don't know if Isabel, if you want to tag on.
Isabel, you go first.
That's the last 25 years of my career.
I would tell you that, so the challenge of the beauty security is that the outcome that we put is not tangible. It's not a new feature. It's not a new biometric recognition software. The value that we put, the output of security is no losses, no ransomware, no hacked accounts, no well-trained staff that did not fall for a phishing scam. That's the value. Now, if you do look at the reports, if you do look at statistics, reputation, people tend to forget that the reputation of X company was hacked, but the moment the company loses money, the moment ransomware hits, that's really hard to forget. So for security, the value of MFA is because of MFA, you didn't get hacked. Because of consistently applied MFA across the board, you didn't lose money.
All right, Julien.
The challenge is, one of the big things that we try not to do in cybersecurity is to produce FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like, you do not want to scare people into doing the right things. And the reality is that there's so many breaches happening that there's so much data. You look at the annual reports of all these companies and everything else, and they're showing how people are getting in. Initial access, of course, is the number one way to get into an organization. Hackers are lazy. If they can just log in, they'll just log in. They don't have to write code. They just have to type admin and min and they're in. Like, that's a lot easier than writing a proof of concept that's going to take weeks to do. So using in a way that you're not scaring people where they do not want to do anything. I've been on calls where I want to ask a question to someone, and because I'm the security guy, they get on and they're white. They're scared. They think that they did something wrong. And I'm not going to name names, but there's people that actually really act that way. They're scared of us. And we don't want to create that environment. We don't want to create that culture. So you don't want to use fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But at the end of the day, you can't prove that something hasn't happened. There are certain things you can do. For example, if you're using device-bound certificates and you're only allowing certain system to access your account, one thing that's going to be true on the internet forever is that people are poking. There's spin up a new system and look at the logs. People are poking and poking and poking. And if I can show you a log that shows that there were 10,000 attempts to log into the system that were stopped because the person didn't present the right certificate. They didn't even get to a login screen. The system did not accept them because they did not have that certificate. There's a lot of value there that can be implied in that, just in those logs. So there are certain things you can show that your system is working as designed and you are actually stopping attacks.
So, one of the questions I had prepared was, is MFA something that should be an important part of the underwriting control? And the conversation to this point has made me realize it's really, MFA is just a part of the proper authentication and all the parts of that. There's a layered reality to this that the cute acronym MFA is only a part of. Is that how you feel about it? What do you think about that take?
So, yeah, you have three different types of controls, right? You have your technical controls that are actually stopping stuff, and you can detect people going in. So yeah, they were successful, but then you can detect them. So you have to have the right logs, you have to have the right alerts, you have to have the right things if somebody actually bypasses the controls. And then you have your administrative controls. Everybody needs to have MFA. It's hard. Some of the administrative controls are very, very hard to implement. You shouldn't log into the account on your account with a certain device or things like that. Like those are more things that you're not able to put a technical solution around it. I'm not giving you the right ones. Those are all, you can all protect that with technical information. So, and that's we're just talking authentication here. Like, I talked about logs, alerting. We talk about, not, deploying your management interfaces on the public internet. Like if it shouldn't be connected on the internet, don't connect it on the internet. Connect it behind a firewall somewhere. You should segment your network in such a way that even if somebody exploits a system, there is no way for them to get to the system that has more information that they need. We talked about least privilege. Least privilege is not about trust. Least privilege is about maintaining that blast radius. If an executive gets their account compromised, if they don't have access to all the source code because they don't write source code, then the attacker, it limits that blast radius of what an attacker can do with that account. So again, we're only talking authentication here. You do all of that and you forget to put in a good malware solution on your Windows laptop, and somebody installs an info stealer, they're just going to rip the session token straight out of your browser. They're not even going to log in. So yeah, you have the best MFA in the world, but the session tokens are still in your browser and you don't have any malware detection. Somebody clicked on a link and installed something they shouldn't. And all of a sudden, all of their information is being sent out to another user and you don't have any detection on the network side. Again, I can go on and on and on. There are a FedRAMP audit or a NIST SV 853 audit can have up to 400, 600, 700 controls that they're looking at. And if any one of those controls is not well implemented, that's the way the hacker can get in. So you need to implement everything really well.
Isabel, this is where the phrase that I've heard and I've repeated now, extremely fragile, like all of our points create a fragility. If bound together well, it's very strong, but then the one weak link in a chain creates a real problem. Is that, again, I know I keep coming back to these simple analogies, but I'm trying to give myself a capacity to understand it and, an audience that this matters to. And we know this, that there are tons of non-technical people in positions of leadership and power who have to make decisions about this. Is that too silly a way to think about it?
It's an accurate way of thinking about it. With security, there's you don't get a chance to have a weak link because the weak link becomes a catastrophe. So you should there's a lot of controls in a federal environment. You need to make sure that they have to be well implemented. They have to be provable, and you need to be able to provide evidence that you implement them right. It's not just it's implemented. Yes, we did that. It's how, and can you show me? Can you prove it? And can you keep repeating this implementation? Because a one-time implementation also doesn't cut it. It has to be continuous security implementation to continuously protect your environment.
Yep. So as promised, we've been talking about an hour and we haven't gotten to everything. I have a couple of sort of quick fire questions to wrap up with. But before we move to the close, I want to offer you the opportunity to say some more about something we've touched on, or perhaps there's something we didn't get to, or that that's come to mind while we were talking that you want to say something about. Julien, I'll start with you. Anything to add? Anything you want to discuss before we wrap up?
Sure. So, I just went on a rant on getting all the controls right and everything else. If you can segment your environment, if you can make it so that the places in your network are very, very hard to reach and they're very difficult to reach, the controls that you're putting in place, they don't have to be as perfect as you think they need to be, simply because nobody can get to it. Right? When we talk about zero trust, if you put your crown jewels in a safe, inside of another safe, inside of another space, it doesn't matter if that first safe has some vulnerabilities and people can go in and everything else. They need even more tools and more things to go deeper into your environment. So if you go and you protect things and you do the right things and you eat your cybersecurity fruits and vegetables and you do all the right things, your environment that is very, very sensitive is going to be tucked in the corner somewhere where people can't get to. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get reputational harm when people brag that they hacked into your network, but they're not stealing your financial information, your credit card data, your whatever your customer trusts you to do. So that's the very important part to understand, is that we don't need to always be perfect. And I think that's one of the things that cybersecurity professionals or engineers, right? We're used to it works or it doesn't work. Security is never going to be perfect, and security is never going to be a zero entity. It's always going to be somewhere in the middle. And your threat model decides how far down the perfect path you want to go.
Isabel, anything to add?
To Julien's point, the point of security is to continuously reduce risk. The point of MFA is to continually reduce risk. If you completely reduce risk, you don't have a network, you don't have internet, you're in a bunker somewhere in a cave with sticks and stones. The point of security is to slowly reduce risk. That's all you're trying to do at all times.
So I'm going to put one question to both of you. Isabel, you go first. A board, a C-suite, what's one question they should be asking the CISO about their security situation? I know there's more than one. We touched on how many there are, what's the first question that they should ask? Explain it to me like I'm a fifth grader question.
For MFA or for identity?
Just for MFA, identity, or even if you want to broaden it, route to if a member of the board is brand new and they don't know anything about the company and they want to know something about the cybersecurity mentality, environment, what would be a real baseline question to ask if you were a leader in this space and you didn't really know anything?
Are your securities, okay, if I don't know anything, then I wouldn't use any lingo. Is the security that you're using in your company going to be able to defend us against modern attacks and evolving attacks? Can your security program keep up with modern attacks? That's what I would like to know.
Julien, what about you?
I would ask if the technical department understands everything that's on the network and knows about everything that's on the network. That's number one. Visibility is number one. Do you know? Do you have a good grasp of what you're protecting? You can't protect what you don't know doesn't exist. And it's a weird question. And, you're never going to get a real answer because they're either going to say, yes, I know everything that's there. And then there must be something that they don't know about. But to get an answer that goes like, yeah, we're not 100% sure what's on that network is not the answer I want to hear. And that's where I want to spend my money.
All right. Final question, Julien. You're going to get it as well, Isabel, so you can prepare. You've listened to this whole conversation. What's the most important thing people should take away? If they remember one thing that they repeat or they say to try to share with their family or friends or grandparents about protecting yourself, what's the big takeaway?
Don't protect everything to the same level. You're going to go, I don't want to use bad words, but it's not possible to protect everything to the level they should be protecting. If you have a main email address, that's that email address that you use to reset all your accounts, that should be very well protected. Your bank account should be well protected. The information that you care about should be well protected. And that's where you should focus your first go through. People that get, hey, you're reusing your password everywhere. the goal is not to change those passwords on every single site that you've ever been on, including the ones that you have no clue that you've ever logged into. I'm sure my MySpace password is password 123. Like that's probably what it is. Do I care that gets popped? Absolutely not. Right. I guarantee you my bank account password is not password 123 because that's the one I care about. So really do an inventory of where the information that would really hurt for you to be stolen or people to get access to. And those are the ones that you got to start and protect. Again, threat model is not my threat model.
I mean, you touch on insurability, right? We insure things that we care about more to a higher degree. Home may have insurance, but maybe not every couch in your house or, lamp, right? Yeah. Isabel, what about you? What's the one thing you would hope people remember from this conversation and pass on?
In a broad spectrum, in a spectrum of protecting your family, I hope you remember the security truly is meant to keep you happy and stress free. That's the goal, right? The security is basically telling your kids where your helmet, where your knee pads and elbows, so you don't end up in a hospital with a broken something. That's all security is especially with the older generation. Truly, is meant to keep grandma and grandpa safe so they can keep going fishing and traveling, so that they don't fall for silly scams.
Well said. Well said. Anything else? Julien, Isabel?
Immediately thought of those password books that people write their passwords in and everybody laughs at that. It is probably the most secure way to store passwords for a certain demographic of our population, right?
Yeah, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Just don't share it. Isabel Castillo, lead InfoSec Ops Engineer at Lastwall. Julien Richard, VP Information Security at Lastwall. Thank you both so very much for taking your time today. It's been really, really interesting, and I think there's a lot in there about how there's much we can do. It's a bit complicated, but that doesn't mean there aren't things to do, and there are solutions to a lot of the fears that get thrown around in this world. So again, both of you, thank you very much. Everyone else, thanks for watching and listening. We've mentioned a few things here, and obviously there'll be links to some of that in the show notes, as well as links to Julien and Isabel, so you can find them and you can find Lastwall. Finally, thank you very much for taking the time today. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you got any questions or comments, please drop them into wherever you are, and we'll do our best to get you an answer. I'm Martin Hinton. This is the Cyber Insurance News and Information Podcast. Thanks for the time. Enjoy the rest of your day.